Welcome to our channel Crime Loom, the place where true crime stories come alive. In a quiet room, a single camera is turned on. A red light blinks, steady and waiting. A man sits alone at a small wooden table, his hands shaking slightly. He is not here to hide. He is not here to argue. Tonight, he is here to tell the truth. For years, Marcus Hale has carried a secret that has eaten away at his life, his sleep, and his soul. A moment he cannot erase. A choice that destroyed more than one future. Now, for the first time, he is ready to speak. No lawyers. No excuses. No turning back. This is the final confession of a man who can no longer run from his past. The room was silent except for the slow ticking of the wall clock, a sound that seemed louder because everything else felt so still. The man sat alone at the small wooden table, his hands flat against the cold surface. His name was Marcus Hale, though many people no longer spoke it. Most had forgotten him. Some wished they could, and Marcus understood why. He did not expect kindness from the world, not after everything that had happened. He had agreed to record his final confession, not for forgiveness, not for attention, but because something inside him had grown too heavy. For years, he had carried the truth like a stone inside his chest. Tonight, he wanted to let it fall. He wanted someone to hear the story even if they never believed it, even if they turned away in anger. It did not matter. The truth only needed a witness. A camera stood in front of him, its small red light shining like a single watching eye. Marcus took a breath. He had practiced the words in his mind for days, but now that the time had come, his throat felt dry. Still, he forced himself to speak. He began slowly, carefully, as if afraid the words might break. He explained that he had not always been the man the world believed him to be. Once, he had lived an ordinary life. He had a job at a hardware store, a little apartment on the edge of town, a routine that never changed much. People knew him as quiet, maybe too quiet, but never dangerous. He spent his evenings reading or walking around the neighborhood. He never imagined he would one day be sitting under a camera light, trying to explain a moment that had shattered more than one life. Marcus spoke about the victim, a man named Aaron Clay. He said Aaron had been a friend once, not a close one, not someone he told secrets to, but someone he trusted enough to share a drink with, laugh with, talk about life with. Aaron had a warm voice and a habit of tapping his fingers on any surface when he was nervous. He had dreams of starting his own business, dreams Marcus admired even though he never said so out loud. But friendships are fragile. Life has a way of pushing people into corners they never planned to enter. Marcus and Aaron had argued many times in the months before that night. Little things, small disagreements that grew sharper each time, like tiny cracks in glass. Marcus talked about this with regret in his voice. He said the signs were there, but he had ignored them. He had convinced himself that nothing truly bad could happen between them. He had been wrong. He said that the night of the tragedy had begun like any other. Aaron had come to Marcus's apartment to settle another argument, something about money, something about trust. Marcus admitted that his memory of the argument was blurred now. Years of guilt had washed away the small details. But he remembered the feeling. Anger, fear, confusion. The room had felt too small for the two of them. Every word had seemed heavier than the last. Marcus had wanted the conversation to end, to cool down, to walk away. But instead, it only grew louder. He paused in the recording, rubbing his hands together slowly. His voice became softer, as if he was afraid of speaking too loudly, afraid of waking the past. He said he did not wake up that morning planning to hurt anyone. He did not walk into that day thinking it would be the one that defined him forever. But moments can twist fast. Anger can turn into something dangerous without warning. Marcus said he remembered the shock in Aaron's eyes more clearly than anything else. He remembered how the anger drained from his own body the instant he realized what he had done. It was like waking from a dream he had not known he was in. Everything after that moved like cold water around him. He panicked. He ran. He hid. He told himself lies to survive the first days, lies he now felt ashamed of. He said that no matter how many excuses a person makes, the truth waits. The truth follows. The truth grows louder the more you try to silence it. Marcus described how the guilt changed him over the years. He said that every morning he woke feeling like he was sinking. Every night he lay awake, listening to echoes of things he wished he could undo. He tried to work, tried to live, but the memory never loosened its grip. He stopped seeing friends. He stopped going outside except when he had to. Some days he barely spoke a word. He felt like a ghost sitting inside his own life. He said the world imagines that someone like him must be cold, cruel, heartless. But the truth was different. He felt too much. He remembered too much. He carried the weight until parts of him felt bruised from the strain. He knew that regret did not erase the harm he had done. It did not bring Aaron back. It did not heal the people who had lost him. Marcus understood that nothing he said could fix what had been broken. All he could do was tell his story as honestly as he could. He explained that he came forward now because living with silence felt worse than any punishment the world could give him. He said he deserved whatever judgment waited for him. He did not fear it anymore. What he feared was dying without ever admitting the truth. He feared leaving behind a story full of lies and shadows. The camera's red light kept blinking, steady, patient. Marcus continued speaking, sometimes stumbling, sometimes pausing for long moments before finding his voice again. He explained how he had tried over the years to write letters to Aaron's family, apologies he never sent because he felt they were not enough. He talked about the nightmares that came every night. The ones where Aaron stood silently, not angry, not hateful, just watching him. Marcus said that was what hurt the most, knowing that the man he had wronged did not even need to blame him for him to feel the weight of his crime. He said the confession was not meant to soften his image or ask for sympathy. It was simply the truth, and he hoped that speaking it aloud would give at least a small piece of clarity to anyone who had ever wondered what really happened as he approached the end, the first part of his confession. Marcus took another long breath. His eyes looked tired, worn, older than his years. He said he wished he could go back, even if only for 1 second, just long enough to stop himself, long enough to change the path that had led to that terrible moment. But he knew time did not work that way. All he had now were his words. Then he looked directly at the camera, steady and calm, and said that this was only the beginning of what he needed to tell. Marcus sat quietly after finishing the first part of his confession. He kept his eyes on the table as if he was afraid to look at the camera again. The small room felt heavier now, as though his words had settled in the air like dust that refused to move. He rubbed his hands together, not because he was cold, but because the motion helped him find the strength to continue. After a long pause, he lifted his head and began speaking again. He said that after the night of the tragedy, he had spent years trying to live a life that did not feel like his own. He moved from place to place, changing jobs, changing routines, hoping that somewhere he might find a version of himself that could forget. But the truth never loosened its grip on him. Every new apartment felt temporary. Every new street felt borrowed. He walked with his shoulders slightly lowered, as if expecting the past to tap him on the back at any moment. Marcus remembered the first town he moved to. It was small, quiet, a place where strangers stood out. He rented a room above a bakery, where he woke each morning to the smell of warm bread. The woman who owned the bakery was kind, someone who believed in second chances without ever knowing why they were needed. She asked him once why he always looked tired. He had wanted to tell her everything. Instead, he said he had trouble sleeping. She had simply nodded and brought him coffee without asking more. He said that kindness like that was the hardest thing to accept. When people treated him gently, he felt the weight of his guilt even more. Every smile reminded him of what he had taken from the world. Every friendly gesture felt like something he did not deserve. So he left the town quietly, without saying goodbye. It was easier to disappear than to face kindness he could not return. In the next place he lived, he worked nights at a shipping warehouse. The job was simple: stacking boxes, checking labels, moving crates. The men there talked loudly, laughed loudly, lived loudly. Marcus stayed in the background, listening. Sometimes they asked him to join their conversations, but he always kept his distance. He was afraid that if he let anyone get close, they would see the truth in his eyes. He said he had spent a lot of time thinking about Aaron during those years. Not just about the night he died, but about the pieces of his life Marcus had never learned. He wondered what Aaron's favorite food had been when he was a child, or what he had planned for his next birthday, or whether he had been happy before everything between them began to fall apart. The more Marcus thought about him, the more he realized how little he had truly known him. They had been friends, but not in the way that mattered. Marcus had never asked the real questions, the ones that told you who a person was on the inside. Losing him made Marcus see all the things he had taken for granted. He said that guilt changes the way a person looks at the world. It makes colors duller. It makes days feel longer. It makes every small sound echo in a way that pulls memories back to the surface. There were nights when Marcus woke suddenly, certain he had heard Aaron calling his name. There were days when he thought he saw him in crowds, only to realize he was chasing shadows. He said that sometimes he wondered if punishment would have been easier than running, because running meant carrying everything alone. Marcus paused again, placing both hands on his forehead. He looked tired, as if the memories drained him with every sentence. But he continued, because he had promised himself he would tell everything, every truth he had hidden, every emotion he had swallowed. He spoke about a moment 2 years after the tragedy, a moment that changed something inside him. He had been walking home from work late at night, passing by a small park. A boy was sitting on a bench, crying quietly. Marcus stopped and slowly approached him, not wanting to scare him. The boy said he had lost his dog and could not find his way home. Marcus helped him look, walking through the empty streets with him, calling out the dog's name. After half an hour, they found the dog hiding behind a trash bin, shaking from fear. When the boy saw his dog, he hugged Marcus without hesitation. Marcus said that hug had broken something inside him. Not the guilt that had never left, but the belief that he was completely lost. For the first time in years, he felt a little warmth, a small reminder that he could still make a difference, even if it was tiny. He walked the boy home and made sure he was safe. The boy's mother thanked him over and over, not knowing that the man she was thanking had once destroyed a life. He said that night he cried for the first time in years. He sat alone in his apartment and let the tears fall. It's not out of weakness, but because something inside him finally understood that hiding was no longer living. He said he realized then that the world was full of people who needed help, and he had spent too long avoiding everyone. He could not change the past. Perhaps he could at least stop running from the future after that night. He began volunteering at a shelter, not telling anyone his real story. He cleaned floors, sorted clothing donations, handed out food. People there treated him like any other volunteer. They didn't know his past, but they trusted his hands. They trusted his presence. Marcus said that trust felt heavy, but not in the painful way guilt did. It was heavy in a way that reminded him he had the power to choose who he became next. Still, he knew these small actions could never erase what he had done. Every good deed felt like a drop in an ocean of regret. But he kept doing them anyway, because doing nothing felt worse. Marcus said that the real turning point came when he saw Aaron's sister by accident in a supermarket. She didn't notice him. She walked past him with a cart full of groceries, talking softly to her young daughter. Marcus stood frozen. He had expected to feel anger or fear or panic, but instead he felt something different, understanding. She had found a way to keep living. She had a family. She had a life. And he realized that by hiding all these years, he had never allowed himself to start living again. Not fully. He walked home that day with shaking hands. He knew then that his silence was no longer a burden he could carry alone. He needed to confess, not to clear his name, but to clear the air around him, to let the truth breathe, to take responsibility for the story he had been running from. As Marcus finished the second part of his confession, his voice grew softer. He said the world deserved to hear the truth. Aaron deserved to have his story told, and he deserved to face whatever came next. Then he looked at the camera again, ready to reveal the final part. Marcus sat very still as the camera continued recording. The room seemed quieter than before, as if even the air was listening. He took another slow breath, preparing himself for the last part of his confession. His eyes looked tired, but there was something new in them now, something like acceptance, or maybe the faintest trace of peace. He leaned forward slightly and continued speaking, letting the final pieces of his story fall into place. He said that once he made the decision to confess, he could not think of anything else. Every day felt like the last page of a book he had been writing in secret. He walked through the city, noticing things he had ignored for years: the sound of buses passing, the chatter of strangers, the warmth of sunlight on his face. He felt as if he were saying goodbye to a world he had lived in only halfway, but he did not feel fear. He felt something calmer, something clearer, as if the truth he had held inside him for so long was finally giving him room to breathe. Marcus said he spent a full week preparing himself. He wrote everything down, page after page, trying to organize his thoughts. Some pages were filled with apologies, others with memories, others with questions he knew would never be answered. He folded the papers neatly and placed them in a drawer, unsure if anyone would ever read them. Then he bought the small camera, the one that now watched him with its steady red light. He explained that he did not want the story to be told by reporters or officers or strangers who only knew half the truth. He wanted to tell it himself, without excuses or explanations that tried to soften the things he had done. He said that the hardest part was accepting the simple fact that no amount of regret could change the past. But telling the truth could at least stop him from hiding behind silence. Marcus said he had thought about Aaron every day since that night. Not always with tears, but always with weight. He remembered the way Aaron had laughed at small things, the way he always tapped his fingers when thinking, the way he talked about wanting to build something bigger with his life. Marcus said that losing him had not only taken a life, it had taken a future, a chain of events that would never happen now. He said that was the part people never talked about, the world you erase when you take someone away. He said he often wondered what Aaron's life would have looked like if things had been different. Maybe Aaron would have opened his business. Maybe he would have gotten married. Maybe he would have become a father. Marcus knew these thoughts would never lead anywhere, but he could not stop them. They were a reminder of what had been lost, not just for Aaron, but for everyone who loved him. As he continued, Marcus's voice grew quieter, but not weaker. He said he knew many people would never understand how someone could make a mistake so big, so painful. He said he did not understand it himself. But he had learned that sometimes the most dangerous moments in life come not from evil, but from fear, stress, anger, or confusion that spirals too fast. He said this did not excuse anything he had done. It only explained the chaos carried inside him that night. He said he hoped that by telling his story, someone out there might recognize their own rising anger, their own boiling fear, and choose a different path before it was too late. He said the world does not need more silence. It needs more people who stop, breathe, and walk away before the worst happens. Marcus then spoke about the letter he had written to Aaron's family. He said he had rewritten it many times, trying to find the right words. In the end, he realized there were no right words for something like this. But he wanted them to know that he carried the responsibility every day. He wanted them to know their son, their brother, their friend had mattered deeply, even to the person who had taken him away. He said he would understand if they hated him. He would understand if they never wanted to see his face again. But he still needed them to know the truth, that he was sorry in a way deeper than words could ever show. He paused, letting the silence fill the room for several long seconds. His hands trembled slightly, but he kept going. He said that after he finished the recording, he would walk to the nearest police station and turn himself in. He said he did not want to run anymore. He said living in fear had already taken years from him. He was tired of living like a shadow hiding from its own shape. Marcus said he was not afraid of prison. He was not afraid of judgment. What he feared most was leaving the world without taking responsibility. He said he owed Aaron that truth. He owed the world that honesty. And he owed himself a chance to face consequences rather than run from them. He described how he had cleaned his apartment earlier that day. Slow and careful, not because he wanted it spotless, but because he wanted to leave it in order. He washed the dishes, folded his clothes, opened the windows to let fresh air inside. He said it felt like closing the last chapter of a book he had been trapped in for too long. Then he placed the confession letter on the kitchen table, next to the keys and a small note explaining where he had gone. Marcus looked up again, directly toward the camera. His expression was calm now, more than it had been in years. He said that this confession was not the end of his story. It was the beginning of whatever came next, something honest, something clear, something without lies or shadows. He said he did not expect forgiveness, but he hoped the truth would help the world understand that even people who make terrible mistakes can feel regret, can change, can choose to face the truth instead of running from it. He said he hoped Aaron would be remembered, not for how he died, but for how he lived. He hoped someone out there who heard this story would hold their loved ones closer. Speak kinder words. Avoid the anger that can grow into something unrecognizable. He said the world is fragile and people are fragile. One moment can change everything. Finally, Marcus reached out and placed his hand near the camera, ready to stop the recording. But before he did, he spoke one last sentence. His voice was steady, almost peaceful. He said that this confession was all he had left to give, and he hoped that somewhere, somehow, it might bring even a small amount of truth to the story that had haunted so many. Then, without another word, he pressed the button and ended the recording. As the camera stops recording, the room falls silent again. The truth has finally been spoken, but its weight still hangs in the air. Marcus Hale rises slowly from his chair, knowing the next steps will change the rest of his life. No more hiding. No more running. Only the consequences he has accepted at last. His confession will not erase the past, but it will stand as a reminder of how one moment can shape a lifetime, and how facing the truth, no matter how painful, is the only way forward. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, share your thoughts below, and remember to appreciate every moment, every choice, and every person in your life. For watching more amazing videos like this, subscribe our channel Crime Loom.